The Fed just saved the American economy from Donald Trump in a 9-2 vote. Giant middle finger from Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, back to Donald Trump, who's been yanking him and hawking him to cut rates when all the economic data that's in front of the Federal Reserve says to do the exact opposite. That the Federal Reserve continues to be worried about consumer prices and consumer spending, which seems to be in retrograde. That they're worried about unemployment, they're worried about tariffs and how those tariff prices are going to be baked into prices, which matter to people around their kitchen table, at the gas pump, at the supermarket, and at the urgent care facility. And Jay Powell got together, and in a 9-2 vote of the Open Markets Committee, they voted to keep the rates exactly where they are right now, and for very good reason. There is only one person that's properly shepherding and being a steward of our U.S. economy. His name is Jay Powell, and his leadership is keeping us out of the depression. I'm going to cover it all right here with the breaking news. The rates are not being cut, that the market already understands that, and that's all a good thing here on the MeidasTouch Network in Legal AF. Wearing my Wall Street, or using my Wall Street superpowers, let's get down to what just happened. As I said a week or so ago, that there was going to be an 11-2 vote against Donald Trump. It ended up being 9-2 because a couple of people couldn't make the meeting. The only two people who voted to cut the rates, to appease Donald Trump, were, you can leave a message now in comments, the Trump appointees, Chris Waller, Michelle Bowman, because they're trying out to be the next Fed chair. That happens May 2026. Donald Trump thought he could make it happen earlier. He thought he could pressure Jay Powell, embarrass Jay Powell, call him a fraudster, threaten to put him in jail, all to make him go early. Not happening. Not going early. Donald Trump knows it, and he knows he can't fire him. He knows he can't fire him because the market, the Wall Street community, would chase after Donald Trump with a pitchfork and torches. He may not be scared of anything else, but he's scared about Wall Street, and he's scared about finances. And he also knows that the United States Supreme Court in May put up the giant stop sign for firing Jay Powell in a case involving Gwen Wilcox, which we call Wilcox v. Trump, in which they said you can fire Gwen Wilcox and a lot of other people, Trump, but you can't fire the Federal Reserve Chairman under the Federal Reserve Act unless you have cause. Ta-da! They just sort of wrote that gratuitously in the opinion. And Donald Trump's always known that. Wall Street's always known it. Donald Trump's always known it. Everybody's known it. So it's always been an idle threat, ridiculous saber rattling. It's only been pissing off the markets to go after Jay Powell. Now we move forward to the Open Markets Committee. They meet regularly. Next time they're going to meet is in September. This was the July meeting at the end of July. And they're keeping rates right where they were. Now, let me make this clear to everybody. Donald Trump just didn't want just a rate cut. He wouldn't have been satisfied with a quarter of a point, an eighth of a point, a half a point. And the rate I'm talking about is the rate that ultimately banks use, the kind of the interbank rate, the interest rate. Once they set their rates, all other rates for consumers, for lending, for borrowing, for auto loans, credit card debt, mortgages, everything that's based on an interest rate comes off the rate set by the Fed, the central bank rate for America. Other countries have their own central banks. They set their own rates for their own monetary policy. Most of them are independent. They're supposed to be independent. America wants the Fed to be independent. Supreme Court wants it to be independent. And ratings agencies that rate America and the health of America's economy, like Moody's and Barron's, just 3 months ago said to Donald Trump, we're going to downgrade the rating, the credit report, the credit score, if you will, for America, which makes it more expensive for us to borrow because we got to pay more for interest. So they downgraded us from AAA rated to like A, little a, B, whatever their rating system is. And they said one of the reasons is, was the tariffs, the uncertainty in the economy, threats against the Fed. And they basically said in Moody's report, if you fire the Fed chairman, we are going to downgrade American debt again. So Donald Trump was never going to do that. That was like the third rail. No matter how many times he threatened. And Jay Powell knew that. That's why it was ridiculous last week when Donald Trump was walking around with his hard hat, with his phony piece of paper, and he said, oh, you're $3.1 billion over. Jay Powell took a look at the piece of paper and said, you're adding a building that was completed 5 years ago when you were president. That building is not part of this renovation. Well, it's a building. Good on you, Trump. You knew it was a building. We're back to camera, TV, girl, Apple. My mental faculties are all in place.
Hey everybody, Ben Meiselas here from the MeidasTouch Network. I wanted to let you know about my podcast partner, Michael Popok's new law firm. It's called the Popok Firm. Michael Popok's pursuing his dream of starting his own law firm, really based on the popular demand by all the Meidas Mighty and legal AFers who are approaching Michael Popok with their cases and saying, can you help us? And at that time, Popok was not able to. So he went out on his own. He started the Popok Firm, where he is now handling catastrophic injury cases like car accident cases, trucking cases, malpractice cases, big negligence cases, wrongful death cases. So if you or someone you know have a case like this, the consultation with Popok's firm is free. Give him a call. See if you have a case. It's thepopokfirm.com, thepopokfirm.com, or you can call 877-POPOK-AF, P-O-P-O-K-A-F. So 1-877-POPOK-AF. Give Michael Popok a call. And I'm really proud of you, Popok. Thanks for all the hard work you're putting in.
All right. So the vote takes place. When was the last time we even had dissenting votes? Why do I need to talk about Waller and Bowman? Because they're trying out for the Fed to be the chairperson. Last time was 1993. I think Clinton was president when somebody dissented from this decision. They're looking at the same data that everybody else is looking at. They're seeing slowing job market, higher unemployment, people that have left the employment market. They aren't even looking for jobs anymore. Price increases so far, and we haven't even fully baked in the tariffs that Donald Trump is charging around the world that'll show up in pricing. Consumer spending is stopping. Where's that coming from? Well, Donald Trump fired hundreds of thousands of federal workers. Hundreds of thousands of state workers got fired too because of funding. The entire State Department is gone. The entire Department of Education is gone. These are all consumers and voters. And people see that, or they're related to somebody who just got canned. So nobody's spending. And that is what propels the American economy. Not, yes, manufacturers spending money on their factories is important too. But consumers drive our economy. And when they stop spending, then you choke off the fuel supply for the economy and you have an engine that stops. And that's what the Fed is looking for. Now, let me show you a clip right now of Jay Powell after the open markets meeting.
In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged. We believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments. I will have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that growth of economic activity has moderated. GDP rose at a 1.2% pace in the first half of this year, down from 2.5% last year. Although the increase in the second quarter was stronger at 3%, focusing on the first half of the year helps smooth through the volatility in the quarterly figures related to the unusual swings in net exports. The moderation in growth largely reflects a slowdown in consumer spending. In contrast, business investment in equipment and intangibles picked up from last year's pace. At today's meeting, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 4.25% to 4.5% and to continue reducing the size of our balance sheet. We will continue to determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. Changes to government policies continue to evolve, and their effects on the economy remain uncertain. Higher tariffs have begun to show through more clearly to prices of some goods, but their overall effects on economic activity and inflation remain to be seen.
He's not going to be stampeded into a rate decision, and he gave you the reasons why. Now, Donald Trump went all apoplectic, but also understood there were limits to what he could do. Oh, he didn't cut. He's always too late. He calls him too late, Powell. He's always too late. Let people do all their refinancing now. We need cheap money. Right, we need cheap money because you have failed economic policies. We got to start calling it what it is, Trumponomics. And it's terrible for the American people and the American economy. And we got to pin it to them at the midterms, Trumponomics. Hashtag, let's get it Let's get it to be trending. And he starts attacking. We need lower. See, Donald Trump doesn't want, as I said earlier, doesn't want rates a quarter point lower. He wants like 2 points lower, 3 points lower, like 1 point interest rates. Let's get 2 point mortgages, 2 percentage point mortgages. Never happening. They're going to flood the market with money. You know what that would do to prices and inflation and wages? Through the roof. Economy, it's not sustainable. But Donald Trump's a short-termer. Mentally, chronologically, presidentially. He's got a very short time horizon. He's got to do maximum damage and then leave it to us to clean up behind the elephant. Because he'll be long gone. Natural causes or, electoral constitutional timeout. So we'll continue to follow it all right here. You're on the MeidasTouch Network. I love talking about things related to Wall Street at the intersection of law, politics, and the economy. I do it for you here about 14 times a week almost on MeidasTouch. But then I got a whole nother channel you've maybe heard of, Legal AF, the YouTube channel I do in collaboration with the MeidasTouch brothers. And I curate about 12 different contributors. Come over. We got 12 new videos a day on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.